a new computer. This is terrible. Everything's so slow. Here we are, Ricki. I think we've got what we needed. But why? There we are. Finally, I can see you. I can see everyone, and we can even see comments. That's what I wanted. Hello, folks. Welcome to the Bird Emergency. Oh my goodness, what a start. Happy Valentine's Day, Ricki. Did you go and waste $40 on some chocolate and some flowers and give them to anybody or anything?
No, I didn't. No, I'm not a Valentine's Day celebrator or a Easter celebrator or any of those kind of day celebrator, really. All the things where you buy unnecessary stuff.
Of any day.
Yeah, I'm a celebrator of any day I go birding.
Folks, there's the first question for the day to get the comment box rolling over. Do you do Valentine's Day? And if you do, what did you do? Or did you receive something? There we go. There's something that we can
sorry about that. I had a lighting hassle.
That's okay. So, folks, we're here to talk about, as you can see in my camera shot, a new book that's available now, and it's called Little Brown Birds of the Sydney Region. And wow, for the first time, I'm speaking to the author of this book in her capacity as author of this book. Although haven't we talked about this book many times?
Once or twice we have, yes. Yeah, during the time of its creation.
Let's start there, Ricki. When did the idea of a book about little brown birds enter your head?
Well, I think to answer that, we probably have to go back to about 2007 when I was contacted by BirdLife Australia to produce, at that time it was called Birds Australia, and that was to produce a kind of, I guess, a field trip, an educational field trip for birders in Sydney. And I came up with doing a daily workshop on little brown birds. And so that kind of began with me just printing out some A3s of illustrations that I'd created in Flash, of all things, so an animation tool. So I created some quick illustrations of little brown birds in that and sort of pegged them onto some poles attached to some tripods and took them up and was standing in the car park in front of Castlereagh Reserve, where I was giving a talk to a dozen or so attendees. And we did something along those lines a few times. And then I created an ebook, or a PDF, really, not a true ebook, but just a PDF. And so I upgraded the illustrations for the PDF, and it sat there for many years as being just this little brown birds of the Sydney region. And it was just very basic on how to identify these birds by just comparing some of their features. And I guess it was about 2022, the end of 2022, that I decided that I would upgrade the illustrations. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I want to do something more than just a basic ebook or PDF. So I decided I would create something suitable for print. And so I had to rethink everything and I guess come up with a means to sort of not to celebrate these birds, but not just in terms of a kit for quickly identifying them, like some kind of a little field guide, but something that also educated people on how to use field guides and then how to look at birds, how to get all the bird watching skills to be able to identify the birds. And then I figured on top of that, well, let me also go into telling the story of little brown birds in the Sydney region. And really, it's a reflection of little brown birds in the entire Australian region. Now, this, of course, when I say little brown birds, it doesn't mean, say, tawny grass birds or little grass birds or cisticolas and birds like that. It really sticks to the Acanthosidea and the Maluridae. And when I say that, I mean thornbill, scrub wrens, georgines and all their friends, and the fairy wrens and emu wrens that you would find around Sydney.
Now, you know I have to be a nitpicker.
Yeah.
Why have you put a fence around them? Why have you kept out the amazing cisticola or, heath wrens and amazing birds like that?
Well, the heath wrens are included, but cisticolas I didn't, because generally it's not such an ID problem. Like you're never going to find yourself really, I think, in the kind of like a cisticola sharing a habitat with acanthisids. So it would be a very rare day around Sydney. You would find, say, a chestnut-rumped heath wren or any kind of thornbill near a location where a cisticola is. Perhaps you might, in some areas in Western Sydney, get a yellow-rumped thornbill near a paddock where there's a cisticola. But it would be a very rare thing. And it generally tended to be, the general feedback I get from birders is that it's the thornbills and the scrub wrens and the georgines that are the problem. And I know that people all struggle, or many people struggle, with identifying fairy wrens when they're in their dull plumage or non-breeding plumage, if you like, and also the females and the juveniles and immature birds as well.
Just slightly wandering down this path, what do you reckon are the hardest to identify group of birds in, let's keep it centered on sort of the Sydney region, but if we want to be adventurous, let's spread it out maybe to Australia. And folks, I can see more people jumping in. Feel free to pop a question or a comment in at any time. We've asked if you partake in the Valentine's Day. I was going to say festivities, but I don't really want to know about people's Valentine's Day festivities. But perhaps give us an idea of the group of birds, or if there's one bird from another that you find extremely difficult to reliably identify. That would be good. So, Ricki, which group do you think are the hardest to identify? And you don't have to stick to little brown birds.
I think terns can be a real struggle. Once you start getting into the world of terns, you can be in for a bit of strife pretty easily. But I think a lot of people struggle with shorebirds. And there's nothing like a trip to Broome and visit our good friends at Broome Bird Observatory to help you overcome those identification issues. But I think a lot of people struggle with shorebirds, and a lot of people don't go near shorebirds because of that. But I know for me, sorry, yeah.
No, keep going.
I know for me, if I go near a shoreline, it's not a bad idea to pack the field guide in case you get some, wayward tern coming in that you're not used to seeing, that might be different, or might be, a vagrant or something in your area, or just unusual, or that you might be seeing terns in unusual molts side by side, and then that can become an issue as well. But it's always, with all birds, it's about knowing the keys. Like with most shorebirds or waders, whatever you want to call them, you begin by looking at the beak, the profile of the bird, and that's often a very good start. But with terns, you might look at feet colour and bill colour and size and wings and how wings relate to tails and things like that, as well as markings on the head, which issue there is all of those crest feathers and crown feathers. They can all vary and get you in trouble. So, yeah, turns can be a thing. And, yeah, so that would be the one that I find I struggle with without a field guide on hand.
I think with shorebirds and, generally seabirds in general, they're often really, really challenging because they're a lot further away than
Oh,
you
yeah.
will encounter bush birds.
Mm.
So I think if you can get a good look at a lot of, and I'm not discounting how difficult terns are, but often you just don't get a good look at a tern. Like you'll see it
Yeah.
fly past, and by the time especially if you've got something like a scope, and by the time you've got it trained on the bird, it might have started flying away from you, and you can't get a look at those distinguishing features, and then it's gone off on the horizon. So bushbirds generally give you a better chance, especially if you're only decked out with binoculars rather than a high powered scope.
Well, they're more familiar and accessible. It's just, yeah, accessing any kind of pelagic bird comes with added difficulties and issues. And most of my work done with terns has been on beaches and rocky headlands where they're roosting. But it's you do get those flybys, and it's like, oh, what was that?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. You haven't got any honey eaters in your book, and just before we go to, I'm delaying it, Ricki, because I've got this dread that all these scenes I've set up, that when we go to them, we're not going to have our audio in them, because I think this program works differently to the one we used to use. But
learn on the fly.
When I was away, when I was away with Millie, the group of birds that I had difficulty with were honey eaters, because so many of them look so similar, and a lot of the recognition. I mean, I talk about this a lot with the urban birds that we see regularly around us. Sometimes you can just tell what a bird is if you just get a look out the corner of your eye, because you're familiar with the way they fly, and maybe with the way that particular species lands. And yeah, there we are. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
we go to
go to
honey
North
eaters. We go to
Queensland and
that's right. And
yeah,
and I really struggled with being confident. Like, you could have a good guess, but I don't record anything unless I am like 100, well, as close to 100% sure as I can be that's what it is. And so many of those honey eater groups are very different. And from the time when I think we've talked about it before. When I was a little kid growing up with the Slater Field Guide, Volume 1 and 2, and the Gould League for Bird Lovers guides, and you commit them to memory when you're a kid, and then you come 25, 30 years later and you open up the Australian Bird Guide, and half the species are gone, and there's another 15 species with different identifying marks. So you're fighting against your long-term memory as well.
yeah.
Oh, here we go. Now let me say, Naomi is here. Thanks, Naomi, for joining in. Oh yeah, Naomi's got another group there, Ricki. Congratulations on the book, Ricki.
Thank
Naomi
you.
says.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sounds so interesting. Shorebirds challenge Naomi. Well, I think shorebirds challenge everybody. And Naomi finds little brown birds difficult, as well as raptors. Well, raptors, we've got the classic, haven't we? the brown goshawk versus collared
Oh,
sparrowhawk
college.
in Australia. So you're looking at the eyebrow ridge, the angry stare, the rounded tail, the
Big
long,
long tail.
yeah, and the longer legs. But
The
then, of course, you've
trousers or
got male and female and
yeah.
and juvenile as
Oh,
well. So they can be
yeah.
very challenging on the first go round. And then there's also the when you're seeing birds of prey flying, maybe they're just circling on on some warm winds, having a bit of a chill, looking out for some unsuspecting bird or mammal, and you're looking at the shape of the wingtips or any patterns in the underwing. That can be difficult, because then there's birds like the little eagle that are never consistent over the country.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Raptors, they're really one of those things where you've got to see them frequently and you've got to see a lot of them. And then I guess again that comes to go to Broome. And yeah, you can 12 raptor species in a day is a regular thing. And I think we got 17 or 18 species when I used to be the warden up there years ago, and we got 17 or 18 species in one day, driving a bit, driving around Broome and then going inland as well. And yeah, really.
well, there's an interesting point to just go off for a second. Let's see, 17 species: brown falcon, little eagle, wedge-tailed eagle, whistling kite.
Black kite.
What else? What,
Oh yeah,
black kite.
black-breasted buzzard, white-bellied sea eagle, wedge-tailed eagle. We used
Didn't
to
I
get
say
collared
wedgie? Maybe
sparrowhawks
not.
and brown goshawks in at the feeders every day. What else did we
And
get up there? Did I say square-tailed kite? Um,
well, we'll throw that one in now.
yeah, I don't know. Let me look in the field guide and see if I can
Did
jog my memory.
I can't remember if I said little eagle.
Oh,
What
of
about
course,
the
peregrine
hobby
falcon. Yeah,
peregrine falcon,
I
Australian
don't think we got
hobby,
a hobby on that day, but
black-shouldered
we got
kite? Didn't
we
get
got black-shouldered
okay,
kite,
black-shouldered kite.
Australian kestrel, yeah,
Oh,
square-tailed.
Australian
We
kestrel.
only got one
So
square-tailed
down
kite
to
ever up there, and it was on that day. Oh, spotted harrier, we got that out the back.
spotted harrier,
Yeah.
and black falcon.
No,
Black
no,
falcon, grey falcon.
I don't think a black falcon's even on the record at Broome. I don't know. It could be, I guess. I don't know. I'd never saw one there. Did get a grey falcon a few times
Well,
in Broome.
we got two more. We got two more, I think, to get to what did you say?
What did
17.
we have? Yeah, sure. We had peregrine,
Uh,
Australian kestrel,
Vasa,
brown
Pacific
falcon.
Vasa,
Oh, no. Black-shouldered kite. You didn't get the bazza up there.
red goshawk.
No. I've only ever had the red goshawk once at Mataranka Springs in Northern Territory. That's my one and only red goshawk sighting. So let me see. I'll do the countdown again.
Well,
Osprey, white-bellied sea eagle, wedge-tailed eagle, use the environment, and then how to use binoculars. Because you hear a bird and you go, oh, that's a white-browed scrub wren. Well, I'm not going to look in the canopy. I'm going to look in the lower shrub layer of the ground cover or right on the ground. And so that's knowing about a bird and how it uses its environment. And then, my binoculars are already pre-focused. I'm going to spot it with my eyes. I'm not going to hunt with my binoculars. I'm going to spot it with my eyes, and then I'm going to go bingo, and I'll have the bird. And these are just very simple basics, and just having those sort of things like laid out before you in a book can create a good confident birder who knows that, here are the skills I need. Here's I'm going to go out and brush up on. So when I walk a trail, do I walk it do I come around a corner like walking it out wide so the quail or the pigeons on the forest floor around the corner see me before I get there? Or is my shadow going to stick out? Have I got the sun behind me? Is my shadow going to stick around that corner and be moving around and frighten the birds off before I get there? Those kind of things. If you're walking on an undulating trail, is my head or my bright coloured hat going to be the first thing they see as I come over the hill, and they'll be gone before I even see them? All of those kind of little tricks for how to walk a trail.
Remember, Ricki, ages and ages and ages ago, we talked about binoculars. Probably about 18 months ago, might even be more. And you told me a little trick that I didn't know about how, like, if someone is lending you some binoculars, that maybe you're having to use someone else's, or it's a new pair, and you have to here we go. Naomi, does that mean you couldn't hear us while we had the images of the books up? I think that's what's happened. So I think,
no.
Ricki, we're going to have to
reiterate.
Yeah. So
Naomi, perhaps you could let us know if you heard any discussion about binocular use, birding skills on trails, or fairy wren identification.
This is always the problem with
we'll just have to abandon those
had a guest
images
to try it out with.
I'll show them very briefly.
No, here we go. No sound with the book images. Oh, well, so well, folks, what you're just going to have to do is bear with us while I know what I can do. I know what to do. Here we go. No, I've got this sorted. There's another little trick in this. Here we go. But it makes the computer run slower. So I'm waiting for something to happen, folks. I am okay. So I can. Hold on, I don't think I can. No, it's not going to work. It's not going to.
That's okay. We can go back to it. Well,
no.
I'm going to look at my picture in my book, my copy of the. Actually, before we go any further, just so you get an idea of the size of these books.
They're the same size
as it's the same. Little Brown Birds of the Sydney region So that's a very familiar book to everyone. The Compact Field Guide. Same. So I remember when I have to say, when I got this book, this is the proof copy. So I ordered a proof copy as soon as we started dealing with the publisher, and who is Green Hills Australia, who is fantastic. If you're going to publish a book, talk to those people. Print on Demand Publishing, they are amazing people, have been just so easy to deal with, so helpful through the entire process. I tried others, and this book would have been released last October, but I got so stuffed around by various publishers who didn't give me a complete picture or whatever. But this one, yeah, they were great. Green Hill. So this is the book. And so when I got it, I just thought, wow, this book is absolutely everything I dreamt it would be from the moment of conception of the book. So I was just so happy. Now, of interest, the print, paper quality and everything for this book, which I'm very happy with, is what most people will get, but that is with one publishing company or one printing company, I should say, on-demand printing company, and it's terrible, but I've forgotten the name of them. I will remember it soon. Apparently, Amazon don't have this quality printer in Australia. They have one that's higher quality. So if you buy off Amazon, and I haven't seen a copy from Amazon yet, but it would appear that you get a higher quality copy, but you might pay a few bucks more for it. So it's kind of odd. Can I remember the name? I might just look at something for a moment, if you don't mind. Oh,
go for it.
And Ingram Spark. That was very funny because the first email I opened then was from my publisher who just said a box of 100 books is coming my way from Ingram Spark, which is the ones who produced this book. So I'm going to make those available through my website, and they'll probably be at quite the special price, and you can get them signed as well. So there's a little spiel for my book. But, so I was quite thrilled with it. I just wanted a basic little paperback book and one where, the content could be printed throughout, and you would get to the end of the book and you would have a field guide section like that. And we will be able to show, I think, some of those graphics up and maybe only very briefly, and then I can talk to them. But we can do that afterwards, I think.
No, we're going to find out in just a moment if I have sorted this out. So, Ricki, we're about to go to the feathers for the feathers page.
All right, so we've done binoculars.
I'm relying on you. Yes, we can come back to that, but this is, I think, I just want Naomi to very quickly tell us if, when I do this, when the computer eventually, there we are. Now, folks, please tell me, can you hear what I am saying? You are looking at a beautiful male wren, fairy wren, with some feathers around him. You can let us know whether you can hear what I am saying, and if you can, we can progress while I have to do preparation things in the background.
Fabulous. So Naomi says we can be heard.
We have a comment. We have a comment, and I reckon Naomi's saying,
I hear you now.
All right, here we go, Ricki. I hear you now over the image. Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Okay.
Now I can fix up all these other scenes as we...
Tragedy averted.
And thank you, Vicky. Oh, Vicky, nice to see you. Nice to see you here too. Don't forget, if you've got a question or a comment as we go along, feel free to jump in, and we'll do this as I am. Ricki, you have to just keep talking while I do.
Oh, okay.
For all the next slides.
All right. So, well, basically, I think a quick overview of the book is that it comes, it's more or less in 3 sections, because the first part of the book is comprised of a couple of chapters that go into, like, you open the book and it doesn't even sound like it's much for beginners, but I didn't want I think that you might be just sort of starting to discover these birds or birding or anything about birds, and might be quite unfamiliar with a lot of things about their lives, or basically anything to do with ornithology. But chapter 1 is little brown birds, but chapter 2 is origins, evolution, and biogeography. And so it dives straight into the story of Australia, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But then we go into breeding ecology and feeding ecology, and then the book goes into basically bird watching. So once we've learned some of the stories of these birds in a general sense, then we go into binoculars, clothing and equipment, bird watching skills, so fieldcraft and trail skills and things like that. Then how to look at birds. Once we know how to look at birds and start to know about the feather topography and those sorts of things, now we're ready to be able to look in a species accounts or field guide kind of section, and there you can really learn how to identify these birds quite quickly and learn the key features to look at, because identifying birds is often a task that requires as much things not to look at as there are things to look at. And we'll get into that shortly. How are we going there with our fairy wren decoder at the moment, Grant?
I'm just waiting for the computer to catch up with what needs to happen. We're nearly there.
Okay.
We're nearly there.
All right. Yeah.
All right. So that gives me an opportunity to ask again, everybody, what are the birds that you find hardest to identify? So tell us that. Would you like me to whiz over to the slide now with all the parts mentioned, Ricki? That's the next one, isn't it?
Yeah, we're not going back to the fairy wrens.
We can.
The fairy wren decoder.
Keep chatting for a minute. Just have to keep chatting for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. Add us into that one. Here we go. The fairy wren decoder. So, folks, help us out. Tell us the group of birds that you find most difficult to distinguish between, and do you have a particular nemesis bird like that? Because I really struggle with some of the honey eaters. There's no doubt about that. Here we go. We're just about there, Ricki. I've worked out
Look,
short.
anyone who doesn't live in North Queensland could be forgiven for struggling with North Queensland honey eaters when you go up there for a visit.
I also reckon when you go into you get into the arid region, and perhaps you're not you're just not familiar with any of those birds. I mean, for every honey eater that you are familiar with in the southeast, there will be a very, very similar bird that you just don't know in the arid, semi-arid area. And I'm sure it's
that's all homework.
Kind of bird everywhere you are.
Yeah. If I go somewhere new, I will avail myself of listening to bird calls on Xenocanto or eBird. Some people will, whip out the iPhone and listen to the calls of maybe, I don't know, say you're going somewhere where there's the inland thorn bill, and so I'll go and listen to its call, and then I'll whip out the field guide and I'll have a look at the inland thornbill and start to look for the features that will I'll be able to identify that bird with, and look at the other birds in that locality that I might confuse it with. And and the first thing you do when you open a field guide is it says that it often has its tail cocked. So that's one feature you might look for. But when you start to look at the other birds that's likely to be around, the only one that's going to be a problem is the brown thornbill. And of course, you're just going to look and see that the brown thornbill has that little rufous frons or forehead that's quite lacking in the inland thornbill. And so you're going to look for features like that. And possibly I think the striations are more coarse on the breast of the inland thornbill as compared to the brown thornbill. So now striations and how dense they are, or how how much they might stand out, that's something difficult to tell on its own. That's usually a comparison thing. So you want to look at features that stand alone. Does it or does it not have a brown frons? Is its tail cocked or not? Tail cocked is probably 50% of the story, but if you see that frons and the tail cocked, or that frons is greyish, not brown, and it's very heavily streaked, well, then you know you've definitely got yourself an inland thornbill. So the streaking is a secondary feature, and we're going to get into that shortly. But I guess we can go back to talking about fairy wrens again, and I'll try and cover some of the salient features, and you might have some ideas or conversation about this too. But basically, this decoder helps you if you're in Sydney where there are variegated and superb fairy wrens. They generally are found in habitats with different structures. So you don't too often come across them both in the same habitat. There are patches I know where you do, and there's patches where the structures which support both of them can be found very near. And right, Vicky, thornbills would be my struggle on a trail. Well, we can cover thornbills in a minute. So with the fairy wrens, you're going to look for what have we got? Purple-backed and variegated. Right, yes. I don't have purple-backed where I'm in, because purple-backed and variegated used to be considered the same species. So they were split a few years back. And with them, it's really about, that colour. And I'm just thinking, and I'm now consulting my field guide, but I'm thinking that the purple-backed, you also look for perhaps the female, because the female, what have we got here? I don't know. I would really say that when you look at the variegated and you look at the purple-backed side by side and do the comparison, it could be quite easy. But I think this is a bird you've really got to get your eye in on to make that determination. So I'm gathering, Naomi, you're living somewhere along the slopes or into Queensland, where you might get them both occurring together. But that's they are a kind of difficult one. I wouldn't blame you for that struggle.
Naomi's going to have to clarify where she's having that struggle, because Naomi's.
I know you're variegated in your backyard and superb in your front. It's a thing. We could do an entire podcast on where you find superb fairy wrens versus variegated fairy wrens and habitat structure, and it's really interesting. I've got a photo somewhere where I'm holding both those birds in my hand, and the superb fairy wren is several grams heavier than the variegated fairy wren, but they both have the same size bill. And the variegated fairy wren is made for, it is much more a little leaf gleaner, and will tend to stay in the dense ground cover and glean out of the any leaf axils and flower axils where the stems join and things like that, where it can get that a long skinny beak into, or a comparatively long skinny beak into, and access those places. Now it will come out and hop around on a trail and have a feed there. We'll do those things for sure, but generally you'll find them in more where there's more complexity in the vegetation. Where the vegetation gets simpler in structure and less diversity and often monocultures, that's where you're going to get superb fairy wrens. And I know there's a path not far from me where you get both, and but the superb fairy wrens definitely go for the long grass and into the mangroves. The variegated fairy wrens into the more diverse vegetation. And it seems it's actually, I think a lot more work could be done on that and understanding how those two birds use these habitats, because I think it could help us understand bush regeneration practices by groups who are doing that and organisations that do bush regen. How effective is it? What fairy wrens did we used to have and what do we have now? Versus or maybe after bushfires, how well the regeneration's taking place, what's occurring where. And because your superb fairy wren, you will find them where there's a little grassy patch where they can come out and sort of lunge and jump onto their prey and grab it in the grass or off the ground, as much as you will find them in the ground cover and into the shrub layer. Generally, fairy wrens will go higher into the shrub layer than variegated fairy wrens, but these guys all break the rules as well. But as generalities, those things hold pretty true, that you would look for a superb fairy wren around a monoculture and somewhere with some open space to come and feed. So in urban gardens or gardens on the sides of parks where there's grass for them to come out on and that vegetation to retreat to and also feed in. And variegated fairy wrens where the ground cover and shrubbery is much more diverse and complex. So, but when you do see them, your variegated fairy wren has very long tail. So its tail is always much longer than the and the tail of the superb fairy wren is generally less or maybe just a tad more than head body length, but not much more than that. And that's a really quick way to tell when you're looking at the dull birds. If you see just the head of the bird, then, and it's a female, then you'll want to look at the colour of the bill, because when you look at the superb fairy wren, they are red around the eye, or the female, I should say, and the female variegated fairy wren, both the same colour, red around the eye and in the lores, which is that space between the eye and the bill. So they've got like that little reddish eye stripe going on. The superb fairy wren bill is the same colour as the eye stripe or the lores. The variegated fairy wren's quite a few tones lighter, and that's a really, that you don't need to compare or anything to pick that one up, because it's just one is demonstrably duller and or paler. And that really shows. But and when it comes to the males in breeding season, well, that's very easy to tell. But outside of the breeding season, you go straight to the tail, because the males of both species have blackish lores and a blackish bill. And it's really only the tail that's going to tell you the story there. And of course, we were talking about some of these plumages and how the females are actually breeding these males through sexual selection, and that the colours in them, yes, they are determined by genetics, but also, and genetics may be the bullet, but the trigger is the diet. And because those colours or that must be offer an example to the female of this bird's capacity to feed them and to feed their young in the nest, and then once they're fledged as well. So it can't be just a strong bird that can hold a territory, because they're not that concerned. These are matriarchal birds, and they're not that concerned about a male's capacity to hold a territory. They're more concerned about getting the genes of a male who is strong and healthy and fit, who is capable of raising young or helping them raise young, giving them the edge. And of course, there may be, 3 or 4 eggs in a clutch, and they could all be from different males, but this will be just the female, hedging her bets, looking for those very, very bright males.
Now, where do you want to go next, Ricki? Do you want to go?
Hang on, we've got Naomi's got a question. Thanks, Naomi. I occasionally see. I'll get it up on the screen. Yeah.
Yep. So everyone can.
And there it is.
See what
the very tiny tail. Well, maybe they could be in tail molt. So that's often a thing. And we were talking about raptors earlier, and that's another thing about raptors, that if they're in tail molt and you're relying on their tail to identify them, you can get in trouble. But with these little fairy wrens, now and again I've seen fairy wrens with no tail, and it's quite they look quite funny getting around. So they've obviously had an extreme tail molt situation, or a fright where they've just dropped their tail feathers. That can happen. So it may or may not relate to age, if you see with a very tiny tail. So sometimes that can create difficulty if it's a case of it's a male bird with a black bill, and often those sort of very dark or blackish lores, or that between the eye and the bill. That's going to be difficult if they are in like that level of extreme tail molt. But with the females, you could just refer to the colour of the bill, and if it's lighter than the red in the lores, it's a variegated. If it's the same colour, it's a superb. And we were looking at binoculars earlier too, my binocular page. I don't know if you can pull that up very easily now, Grant, or not.
I can. Just give us a minute.
But everyone did see the binocular page.
I'll just get that ready to pop up.
And I can perhaps talk a little bit about why the book has a chapter on binoculars. And that's because binoculars is probably one of them. It is the crucial tool for enjoying your birding and birding effectively. But there are other tools, and the first tool is basically, it's listening. So it should be called bird listening, not bird watching. So because the first hint that you've got a bird anywhere around you is its call, generally, is its call. But then you need to know how birds use the environment. So if I hear a white-browed scrub wren call, I'm not going to look in the canopy or even high in the shrub layer. I'm going to look down lower in the shrub layer or in the ground cover or on the ground right in front of me. And Naomi's got a question about fairy wrens, which I think I don't know if it's going to come up on the screen or not.
I'm just popping that up.
If you pop that up, we'll get back onto the other in a moment. Yes, it is very much. Often, I generally tend to find here around Sydney that I'll get 3 females. Sometimes it's 2, but generally 3, and 2 males in a variegated fairy wren family group. And one will be, the very beautiful alpha male, and when you see him he's sort of bright plumage, you'll notice that he's got a very lovely violet cap right through. But when you see one that's, say, less than 3 years old, even in the peak of summer, he will still have a little bit of grey on the back of his cap, and that reveals, this is a bird that at the end of the season, he's going to go back into that really patchy intermediate plumage and then into dull plumage. And the other one, who's looking very, very bright, might go slightly intermediate, but then he'll come back into bright plumage again. He won't go back into completely dull plumage because he's, perhaps, at least 3 years old, generally 4 or 5 years old, sometimes a little older even. And so, they maintain pretty nice colour year round. And they're the ones that the girls are really looking for because they're strong and experienced enough to have lived that long. Because most birds and animals don't reach adulthood. So, to live extra years is really good fun.
I've got something I can add on that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Naomi has listened to the episode of the podcast that I did with Ettore Cameralenge, who was doing his PhD on the superb fairy wrens in I'll get it wrong, but a park on the edges of Melbourne, and we talked a lot about the way the well, let's just say there's a lot of polyamory going on in the fairy wren world. So that was pretty well covered. And then I'm pretty sure Holly Kirk and Holly Parsons and I had a conversation about that too, based on I think Royal Park in Melbourne. Anyway.
Oh no, it's very much a thing, and it's fairy wrens. They're known as the most promiscuous, especially the superb fairy wrens, considered the most promiscuous bird in the world. So all of that's going to be going on, and I guess it was probably in the middle of summer. I was following a family group of variegated fairy wrens along a trail in Royal National Park, and I was thinking, wow, this trail's going on a long way. It was around about 100 metres. I'm thinking, so they've got quite a long stretch of trail here as territory. Then they ran up against another family group and it was on. And so both family groups had 3 females and 2 males, and they were squabbling big time. Then they separated after about 15 minutes of squabbling. And one of the younger male from the party that I'd been following sneaked back as one of the females bobbed out and gave a little call for him to come over. And they were just about ready to copulate when one of the males charged over and chased him off. And I went home and actually did an illustration of this bird as he was flying, because fairy wrens don't do tail between the legs, but gee, he had like feathers raised in all kinds of very interesting ways as he flew off and went back to his family group. And it was definitely, had lowered his colours at that moment, as getting coming second against that very aggressive male who was protecting his female, or protecting what he saw as his female. So you do see that now and again as fairy wrens sneaking in and cuckolding, and sometimes males chasing off others, and some males that stay dull, that are very young and stay dull, they will also sneak in and have a go because they're not even suspected. And there's someone did a paper on it actually, the value of being a dull male, and it's quite an interesting bit of research on that aspect of fairy wren cuckoldry. But getting back to skills and things in the field. Yeah, so binocular skills are really quite important, but for doing the really high-end information part of birding. But if you don't know how to walk a trail, so that you can see more birds and you're not scaring birds, and being aware of what's going on when you walk a trail, you're going to miss birds. And while we had the images up before, you wouldn't have heard me describing how, you can walk a trail. If you walk wide on a corner and you've got a group of people with you, you might be the only one amongst them that sees the quail as they get the first sight of you and go, or the pigeons that are, on the trail. And so that it's always best to stay tight walking into the corner of a trail, and then step out and have a look around. And if you've got the sun behind you, be aware that your shadow is going to stick out around that corner on the trail. And birds or any mammals or reptiles will see that and take evasive action pretty quickly as well. So you've always got to watch those little things. Same as if you're walking on an undulating trail, and you can find that your head with your bright hat will stick up above the trail before before your eyes do, and the bird will have seen you coming and go as well. So knowing that, but with binoculars, and I'm thinking that it may be, I'm not sure with cameras, because I only use cameras to shoot videos of birds now and again for specific purposes. So I'm a real binocular birder. But I will say that the things to do, like, and why I have the binocular chapter in the book, is telling people how they can set them up, and then how to use them. So the basic skills of them, including pre-focusing and not searching for birds in binoculars and that kind of thing. But all of that is in the book, and some of that is just such important information that people that don't understand basic binocular skills, and that is often even pro birders, will miss out. And we're talking about things like pre-focusing binoculars. So you might see a bird in the canopy, and then you'll see a bird beside the trail a few meters away, and that kind of thing, and you'll be focusing backwards and forwards, and often you won't see much of anything, because by the time you get in focus, the bird's gone. Now, with binocular, so when you're walking on any trail, you'll notice the vegetation and the structure and the condition of the trail and the time of day is such that you're seeing most of the birds a particular distance away. And whatever that is, you should focus your binoculars on an object that far away. And so when you do see the birds, you're ready, you're practically on the bird, or it only takes the tiniest focal adjustment to get it. And you will see that bird nice and clearly, and you'll be able to ID it, and perhaps explore some of its behaviour and enjoy your encounter with the bird. But if you've been looking at a bird in a canopy and then trying to focus on something, a few metres away, the bird will be gone before you get it in focus. So pre-focusing is really important. And even if you do, like, if you see, say, 10 birds within 10 or 20 metres away from you, and then you see a bird that's 30 or 40 or 50 metres away, and you're focusing on it right up in the top of the forest, you should return to focusing it back to where you're seeing most birds, so you're ready again. And that pre-focus thing is so important. Another thing is not hunting for birds using binoculars, and unless you're doing ducks, a big raft of ducks, or a roost of shorebirds, or terns and gulls and the like. You don't hunt through the flock.
Can I clarify what you mean there, Ricki? Like,
Yeah.
do you mean that you're not out stomping around trying to add a new?
No. What I'm saying,
no.
What I'm saying is that if you see a bird fly into the canopy of a tree, don't lift your binoculars up and try and find it, hunt for it using your binoculars, because you've only got a small field of vision in binoculars, and it could fly away before you find it. So it's all right to hunt for birds using binoculars in a big raft of ducks or a roost of shorebirds, but when a bird flies into a treetop, the process is lift your binoculars, focus on the vegetation in the treetop, drop them straight away, then find the bird with your naked eye, and then when you lift your binoculars again, it will be in focus. So just little skills like that, skills of how to walk a trail and signs to look for when you're walking along a trail. Like, am I going to see any beautiful firetails today? Well, I'm going to have a look and see I know what they're feeding on at different times of the year, because I've learned about how these birds use the environment, which is so important and a very important part of birding. And so I know in October, November, they're going to be in the casuarina. So I'm looking for their ripe and fairly open-looking, casuarina pods along the trail here. And if they are, I'm going to be really listening for beautiful firetails. That kind of thing when you're birding, or walking around and seeing, wow, there's a lot of pigeon tracks here, and it looks like they're out and about and feeding. I'm going to be really alert to, some bronze wings maybe lurking along the trail or on the side of the trail. So whenever I come around a corner or look over a little rise, I'm going to look a long way along the trail with my binoculars and see if there isn't any pigeon activity going on well up ahead, or, like that. With a camera though, not sure how, because cameras have autofocus, and that's a different thing.
A whole different range of skills, really.
A different topic.
Naomi's got a good tip there that if you can pre-focus, but again, that's going to depend on the focal length and the aperture that you're using, and But it's good tip. So where do you want to go now? I've got pilot birds up. Where do you want to go?
Oh, right. Okay. I guess,
we've got to race through because we've only got about 20 minutes left, I think, before we'll get cut off. So I've got
Oh, really? Okay. I thought okay. Right. Okay. Well, the book does cover one really important thing.
Let's talk about the pilot bird while you're talking about the important thing. Let's get them welded in together.
Yeah. Okay. Well, basically, the book has a chapter on how to look at birds as well. So it covers equipment and all of those kind of things, and how to walk trails and how birds use the environment. But how to look at birds. So being able to understand what a bird's plumage is and what the names of them are. Because if you talk to somebody and say, I'm into birding, the next question is they're going to ask you about some bird they see on their back fence every second day, and they're going to give you the most diffuse description of that bird, and there's no chance you're going to be able to help them because they can't describe it to you, because they don't know any of the topography of the bird or anything about the bare parts, or what to look for with a bird's bill shape, or what colors are actually where. And so the book has a chapter on how to do that. And here, yes, you've got up something here now with a that gives us a little bit of a guide and to some of those, that external feather topography of birds. And really important to know that. And it gives you a little, you can see in the text below that illustration where I suggest you go to the local park with a pen and a paper and binoculars, and using the above topography image, describe a pied currawong and a magpie. Two birds that a lot of people struggle with, but once you do that, you start to really get, this is how I've got to look at a bird. Try that with a noisy miner and an introduced common miner. And I will say that the only typo in this book that I found is I put a H on the end of miner, which is not how we spell common miner.
You're not allowed to do that anymore. That was
because there's another group of birds.
How we started it.
Yeah. So a purist is going to attack me or tear that page out of the book. But that is the only thing that I didn't pick up when I was doing all of my many edits. But anyway, so bird topography. So this way, when we jump into the book, and if you want to go back to that pilot bird, so a couple of things you can see here is that the illustrations aren't meant to be fine art illustrations in this section of the book. They are meant to be illustrations that show the features of a bird, or that help you just see them very descriptively. So these are the common field marks or diagnostic features of a bird. And you'll notice I've got little numbers in those red dots. And the number one is the important thing to look for. Number two is the next important thing to look for. And all the other things, don't even bother to check. Like if you see, like I had the joy of the last few weeks of being in the company of quite a few pilot birds. So I've had quite an amazing time with them. And be very easy to confuse them or to wonder if you're seeing a rock warbler or not, if you're not that familiar with these birds. But you just look for, has it got heavy scalloping on the breast? Yep. Then, that's a pilot bird. If it's pale on the chin or the throat, then you've got yourself a rock warbler. And you might look further down and go, oh, well, number two is it's rufous on the underbody. You can also sometimes see that the pilot bird flicks its tail vertically. So the description covers that. And, of course, the song, I talk a little about the song of the birds as well in this book. And, I just adore the call of the pilot bird. It's very, very beautiful. And if you've ever heard it, you would agree. So, that's more or less how I've put this book all together, this section of the book, to help you identify these features. And here you can really see that it's like if you walk into a rainforest or into any kind of a forest where you're likely to bump into a yellow-throated scrub wren or a white-browed scrub wren, so a tall, wet forest around Sydney or the east coast of Australia, most of it, you could get a white-browed scrub wren or a yellow-throated scrub wren, but the thing you look at is, does this bird have a moustache? No, it's a yellow-throated scrub wren. Does this bird have and disregarding how much yellow you might think you see or not, because sometimes the amount of yellow can vary on a white-browed scrub wren, but just, does it have a moustache? No, then it's going to be a yellow-throated scrub wren, but you just want to make sure you can double-check by going, it's got little sergeant stripes on the shoulder. So the little white-browed scrub wren, they have little white tips on their allular feathers, which are on what we call the shoulder of the bird, which is really like an elbow. But, so they've got those little sergeant stripes because very young white-browed scrub wrens can be a little confusing about that. They're just some of the very quick features, but yes, but it's all described in there. And these pictures, when you look at them, you'd think like those illustrations. You'd think like, they're you can see obviously in the illustrations how different they are. Well, I've drawn them to be that way so that you can see the diagnostic features of the bird very clearly. Because sometimes in the field you can see a chestnut rump-teeth wren, for instance, and a white-browed scrub wren, a female white-browed scrub wren particularly. And you could find yourself struggling for a few moments. So with your ID. So this is why I've highlighted them.
Something I've always felt with the white-browed scrub wren is even just in Victoria, if you're in a fairly open sort of woodlandy situation, sometimes they look quite different to the birds that you'll find in the wet sclerophyll forest. So they're obviously the same species, but the forest birds look more vibrant. But that might just be because of the perception of the light that you are in.
Yeah, light conditions. So I will mention in this book here and there, this bird's got a big red eye, but that's not very, in darker conditions, that's not much use. So,
no.
And this is just a bit more of the same here. And Naomi, I agree. Pilot birds are just gorgeous things. I love watching them. I've got a trail at the moment where there's a pair on each side of the trail calling. It's right near the top of a trail in Royal National Park, and it seems not a lot of people somehow know about it. Perhaps they're not familiar with their song, but just, stunning bird. Very cheeky little bird. I love them. And I have, bits of information on things like, brown gerygonies. And, if I'm walking in the bush with somebody and we're seeing a lot of brown gerygonies, brown thornbills, large-billed scrub wrens, white-browed scrub wrens, and there can be some confusion among them, it's really easy to just say brown thornbill, brown gerygony, silver or pale face with a black eye stripe. And if you see two big white blobs under the tail, it's definitely a brown gerygony. Brown thornbill, big eye, speckly breast or striated breast, and brownish forehead if you happen to get it in enough light. And, white-browed scrub wren, sergeant stripes, eyebrow moustache, large-billed scrub wren, the plainest bird you're ever going to see anywhere, with a bill that looks just a little too big. But yeah, you can also break it down and look at it in here, and you know generally if you're in the company of brown gerygonies, because you will hear that, which is it call, going on all around you, and sometimes around breeding season, a beautiful little trill. Now, I did refer or allude to earlier that we do look at the story of Australopapua and or the biogeography of Australian birds, because I think the evolution of birds, and in this case the little brown birds, the scrub wrens, the thornbills, gerygonies, fairy wrens of Australia, is just a fascinating story, and getting a handle on the places where these birds evolved and the conditions under which shaped them is just such a fascinating story. And the story of these birds is the story of Australia, dating back to 15 million years or more when they started to appear. And so I just didn't feel I could do these birds justice without writing that story and telling that story, and getting sort of like preparing the soil, if you like, for understanding the relationships of these birds. Because when we are talking about birds and their evolution, we are talking about their relationships. And I should say, and I've noted it here on these this illustration of this phylogeny of the Cerericornithinae, the scrub wrens and their allies, that it is more complex because not all of the species in Australia are here. But yeah, it gives you a little bit of an idea about the relationships and the timelines of the sort of the splits in this sort of line of birds that have produced what we've got today. And you can see, even looking at this, there are two groups of birds here. You've got the rock warbler and scrub wren group camp, and you've got the pilot bird, speckled warbler, chestnut rumped heath wren camp, and then separately you've got the weebill, which a lot of people think is, it must be some kind of a thornbill, but it is it's actually the most ancient bird amongst these amongst what we call the Acanthizidae, which is all of the thornbills, gerygony, scrub wrens, heath wrens, like that. And it lies more in the camp of what we do call the Cerericornithinae, which basically means these silky birds.
Oh, I thought it might have been just little brown birds, but they silky for what reason?
Well, I guess I've got a feeling it was Gould who actually changed their name to that when he encountered them, and just he must have seen some quality in the specimens he got that made him feel like this is a very silky looking bird, and these birds in this that seem to be related to it are all kind of very silky looking. So I'm going to call them the Cerericornids. Or I'm going to put them in a genus called Cerericornid. Right on. I think Siri's talking to me. Right on. My iPad on the other side of the room started talking to me.
When we say specimen, we mean bird that was shot.
Oh yeah.
The remains of whatever he had after the shotgun blew it to bits.
Yeah. It's kind of funny.
That's how science was done.
Oh, here's this rare bird. I'll shoot it. Yeah. Well, that was
Yeah, that's right.
It is you. Well, if you go into any museum and go into the bird collection, you'll see a lot of birds that were shot. Some of them were found, rode, killed, and prepared, but for the most part, birds were shot, and that's how they did it. And we would probably find that a little disagreeable these days, and it's generally not the the ethicists that help put these studies together would not give that the tick of approval. There was, even like 20 years ago, maybe even less, 15 years, nearly 20 years ago now, somebody wanted to conduct some research on bowerbirds up in Queensland, and they wanted to shoot, I think it was roughly 50.
Gee.
To which the answer was, you're not.
I can remember.
But I do know I've quoted research in this book where specimens have been shot.
I can remember the absolute heartbreak I felt when I was a kid, who, of course, you think John Gould must have been some kind of a legend. And then to realise that he wasn't actually traipsing around the bush in Australia finding birds and painting them. He was sitting in his drawing room in London, or on the outskirts of London, waiting for the latest package of skins after John Gilbert had shot them. And I remember thinking, oh my God.
And then his wife painted them.
That's right. And he's no longer my hero. That's right.
Oh, well, he was doing things the way I always think you've got to look at, judge a person by the time.
By the standards of the time, yeah.
Yeah. To some degree.
I thought he was out. I just thought he was out traipsing around, that he'd come on some voyage of discovery and he was traipsing around Australia with his easel and but no.
It was like the Wallace or Darwin of his day, out there doing his great ornithological thing. Well, no, unfortunately not. But also now the book does also go into breeding ecology and even a little bit of breeding biology, because there's fascinating things, and it does go into the story of sex selection by brown thornbills. And I am fairly sure they're not the only bird that does it, but the only one I've got research on is the brown thornbill, and you can read all about that in the book, which is just a fascinating story, how these birds, it's called facultatively, which is a word I can barely say, but they kind of choose the sex of their young. And this all depends on the quality of the male. So it's a wonderful story, and one I love to tell. So that's in the book, and that's described there, and that illustration gives you a little bit of an understanding of what that's about. So, it's great stuff. And so also feeding ecology, and so understanding feeding ecology and breeding ecology and how birds evolve gives us a great deal of insight into the lives of these birds and what they are, and also helps us to understand them and also how to find them. And knowing how birds feed is really important. And here's one instance, and I had this several times lately, of having fairly bad light on dull days, and there'll be birds way up in the canopy of a tall eucalypt forest, and what are they feeding right up there? Are they yellow thornbills, which will go up there, or are they striated thornbills? And as soon as you start seeing them hanging off the leaf, that you've got striated thornbills, because striated thornbills do this leaf hanging thing, because none of the other birds are strong enough to do that. So they just have extra long claws and these strong little feet, and their proportions of their legs, if you like, permit them to be able to do that. And you can sometimes also see that they've got a little stumpy bill, which is just made for gleaning lerp, which is a big part of their diet as well. So, yeah, fabulous little birds. It's my favourite thornbill is the striated thornbill. So, yeah, thornbills can be very difficult. And I think somebody wrote that there in a comment that thornbills are their thing, but their nemesis. But, yeah, it's a bit of a thing. So have we come to the end of our time?
So, well, no, we haven't come to the end of our time. I've left plenty of time for people to throw in some questions or comments.
Well, that's good.
And I mean, now you can. We'd love it if you told us any joyful bird watching experiences you've had recently. Ricki, you need to make sure that you are telling people very, very clearly where can the people get hold of the book, and I mean, you've got some that you can sell directly, can't you?
Yeah, so I've got a big box of them coming in. What I've not done is I've not put out links to go and get these at Amazon or through other outlets at the moment, because I've got a big box of them coming. I've got a list of about 150 or more emails from people who are interested in the book. And you can go to my website and you might want to put that
aussiewild.com.au.
Yes, AUSSIE wild.com.au, and you can find in the menu there's a thing there's a link to where you can go and learn a little about the book, and you can express your interest in purchasing a copy, and I will be in contact with you as soon as my box of books arrives, and you'll get them at a better price from me. So I'm probably doing a better price because there's a few, I don't have some of the overheads that the Amazon and others are going to have in producing and distributing these books. So all I'm waiting on is getting these books and popping down a little post. I live about a 2-minute walk from a post office, and just getting the price on what it costs to send a book out, and then I will have the price and I can get books out to people. And I can even get them signed if they like. I'm holding up the wrong book. I should be holding up this fabulous book.
Fantastic.
Now, I can see that Betty Hare's put a comment in. She has a superb fairy wrens in her garden for weeks. Now I have not seen them for 2 weeks. Why is that so? I have Leica binoculars.
Did I miss that, Betty? Was that?
I think you missed Betty Hare's question. Yeah.
Wow.
I
think I brought it up because it was about the veggie garden, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I would have probably missed it because I was just prattling on. Yeah, very interesting, because fairy wrens will, they kind of seem to come and go. And you can walk along trails and not see them for weeks, and then you see them again, and then you don't see them for weeks. And look, fairy wrens do hold reasonably large territories, or at least variegated fairy wrens do. Superb fairy wrens seem to hold smaller territories, but if they are, they will lay up to 5 clutches a season. And white-browed scrub wrens do the same, and they will disappear if they're sitting on eggs, or if the nestlings are very young, or they will vanish, because they'll go undercover, because they don't want to make a whole lot of noise when they're young or at the most critical stage. And the most critical stage for any bird is when it's in the nest. So birds need to get out of their nest as quickly as they can, but while they are in the nest, or while they are you've got a female sitting on eggs and she's under a lot of risk as well, they are extra quiet. And, they can be really hard to see. So throughout spring and summer, you do get that. So you can go for a week or 2 without seeing them, and then there they are again. Now, it may be that your superb fairy wrens were enjoying the bounty that was available for wherever they were in their breeding cycle for you in your vegetable garden. And now they've gone off to another little part of their territory or patch to enjoy whatever is there, because they're always going to live where it's most profitable. The only other thing is that, if you have a local cat, cats can clean up a family of fairy wrens in one night very, very quickly, because the fairy wrens, especially superb fairy wrens, will often roost quite low, and a cat can just come in and clean them all up, which is horrible, but it does happen. So I hope they've just gone off to another part of their territory.
And they also can't fly. Yeah,
at night.
And at night, if they can't navigate to fly up high, they can't fly far. Like the cat can certainly outpace them if they're near ground level.
Yeah. So that's a thing too.
My neighbours have a cat that they didn't get desexed, and it's now had kittens. So now I've got the neighbour with kittens that are desexed, with a cat that is still desexed, and it's really difficult. I've mentioned to them a few times that that the animals need to be desexed, and they need to not be in my yard.
Well, you shouldn't be able to sell a cat without it being desexed. I would think that there needs to be laws about this.
People give them away.
Well, I mean, people flout them, and because they're strays, and
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's a bit
so I think we're going to have some kind of neighbourhood dispute. I was just thinking of just getting a cat trap from the council and just, well, they'll be going, oh no, have you seen our cat? Oh, I've got no idea where your cat is. Sorry. Anyway.
Yes, we have a neighbour with a cat, and it ate our leaf-tailed gecko. So that was a bummer. We had a beautiful leaf-tailed gecko living in our laundry, and our neighbour's cat came in and ate it, and left part of its remnants hanging around. Yeah, it was. I really loved that gecko.
It's horrible. Now I'm just going to say, just in case, because I think we're supposed to be time limited. So if we're about to get nabbed, thanks everyone for jumping in. Thanks, Ricki, for telling us all about the book. And now if we don't get nabbed, we'll just keep talking. And if it just keeps going, we can keep answering questions.
Oh, okay.
Betty, I'm glad you found that useful. Sorry for the production mishaps at the start, but we got that sorted out. On the fly, I'm quite impressed that I managed to do 12 slides on the fly. So, I'm really interested to know, because we're generally talking about bird watching, and those identification skills. Tell us where your favourite bird watching places are. I mean, come on, share your local, your favourite local spot. I'm guessing Betty's favourite spot is her property. Betty's got a property at just at Goulburn, and has been re-vegging it and planting a lot of bird attracting native plants. Betty's a regular in the Habitat Gardening Saturday morning live stream. Oh, which of course is at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow morning if you're in the Australian Eastern Daylight Time zone. So do feel free to pop in there. I don't have a guest tomorrow, so we won't be having all the same issues that we had this afternoon. So yeah, folks, questions, comments. Ricki, I want you to tell me your favourite now regular birding haunt is. It's
the south end of Lady Carrington. Well, my favourite place to be is the south end of Lady Carrington Drive in Royal National Park on Dharawal country. But the birding on the north end is more diverse.
So why do you like one end rather than the other?
One end is this glorious, beautiful rainforest. You walk into a very, very tall forest with just majestic trees all around, and there's not a lot of mid-story through part of that patch, but it's got a lot of ground cover there. And I always say to people that if fairy wrens and scrub wrens played Monopoly, this patch would be Mayfair, because they can live under those ferns and nothing will ever see them. And there are just hundreds of fairy wrens and scrub wrens in that patch along there. Well, if not hundreds, many dozens. But you walk onto there and you can hear so much, life in the canopy, and the lyrebirds singing, and it's just glorious. And immediately you're surrounded by this oxygen-filled, gorgeous environment. And then you walk down along the trail is a little undulating for about 800 meters. And then you come into the most stunning rainforest. And in that rainforest, of course, are all your favourite rainforest birds. And for mine, my favourite bird resides, the yellow-throated scrub wren. And so, I keep quite a track on the yellow-throated scrub wrens right through that Hacking River Valley, and observe them in their lives, and have a number of interesting observations that line up with ideas. But unfortunately, getting a scientific research permit and the funds to be able to research what I would like to research in there, that's just not possible. But there is so much that is fascinating about those birds and their roles in the forest and their lives, that it is just crying out to learn more. And just what I've recorded in terms of their song, and things that no one else has ever mentioned anywhere, but also about their breeding and feeding ecology. It's all pretty amazing. And just this one little bird that hops around on the rainforest floor, feeding on invertebrates and mushrooms and fruit that's fallen on the forest floor, and they never turn a leaf. So they're quite a fascinating little thing, the way they.
Really?
Yeah, they don't turn a leaf. If you see a little brown bird turning a leaf on a forest floor, pretty sure it's not a yellow-throated scrub wren. And they are opportunistic foragers, so they just walk along picking what's on the top. Round about June, July, that little male will start feeding the female, and because they're monogamous pair breeders, so they're hopping along together, going tack, tack, tack to each other all day. If they get a little separated, they'll use this beautiful little sibilant whistle, little high whistle call, and she'll come over and he'll feed her. And when he gets to round about feeding her 1 in every 3 or 4 prey takes, seems to be around about the time that she decides she's going to start building a nest. And he will just keep feeding her and feeding her very copiously, because she builds this very large nest. It can be more than 40 centimetres long, and but it's got a little side entrance, and it hangs above a stream or a wet gully or somewhere where water is likely to run, and it looks like flood debris hanging in the tree. And she builds that all herself. Sometimes she will tear down last season's nest. Sometimes she will renovate last season's nest and use that again. I should also say that during the winter, they will use their nest to roost in at night too. So that they're very interesting like that. They're like little babblers using a nest at night. Though babblers don't use a breeding nest. So while she's building the nest, he will fly backwards and forwards, offering her food and calling and being being very perky and aggressive looking. And if you come too close, he will launch into the most stunning mimicry, and using literally dozens of bird calls, including he even mimics the what I think they call the A call of the superb lyrebird, which is that sort of sounds like the laser gun. I've heard them doing that. And just a stunning little chattery mimic. And Yeah, they will. Now, what I've noticed is when they're young fledge, is that the all along the Hacking River Valley, I've looked at 32 pairs of them, and all but one will raise one or two males and one or two females. But there's one pair, and I've named them Herb and Dorry Feather Fluffer. They've all got names. They're all named after soap opera stars and pop stars from the 70s.
Yeah. Herb and Dorry, number 96.
Number
We'll look at
96,
the
yeah.
books.
Yeah, no, it was number 96. Yeah, Herb and Dorry, and they get a hobbit-like name, like Feather Fluffer. So you'll have like Derek and Layla, Proud Mimic, or Karen and Richard Leaf Scruffler. And yeah, so they've all got their names. So they have a little hobbit-like surname. And so Herb and Dorry always raise 3 young males. And I think they are like the brown thornbill that's mentioned in my book. Now, what we know is that, of course, birds flip the chromosome thing. So in humans, we know males have XX chromosomes and females have XY chromosomes, typically. Now, in birds, the male is... I got that wrong. Males are XY chromosomes, females are XX. So in birds, they flip it, and the female is ZW and the male is ZZ. Now, the more so the female can produce a male or female egg. Now, the more he feeds her, the more her levels of progesterone are suppressed. The less he feeds her, the more progesterone she produces. Now, when she wow, Vicky, that's an interesting tweet, comment there. When she produces less progesterone, she'll produce more male eggs. And I think, and looking at the way Herb feeds her so well, and I think better than the other males, I think he is doing the hard thing. He is feeding her so well that she is producing, her progesterone levels are suppressed and she's producing 3 males. Now, this is really important because you can get a genetic leg up on your neighbours by doing the hard thing. By feeding that female enough that you produce more males, suddenly you've got something that's hard to produce, which is male birds, now going out into the forest. So you are spreading your genes more widely. So it's just a fascinating thing. Well, let's have a look at, and it's part of the story, and I could talk all day about yellow-throated scrub wrens, but Vicky says Skyville National Park to photograph hooded robin. That is very rare for the Hawkesbury. Exploring the mountains on Bilbo. Oh, this is your favourite place to go. When did you see a hooded robin there, Vicky? Was that recently or more like a while back? I think I did hear of one a fair while back. But yeah, hooded robin.
We'll just...
Yeah, in Skyville.
I was extremely excited when I saw pairs of hooded robin near Mount Isa. Now, I know that's not unusual, but for someone from Melbourne,
it's pretty cool, isn't it?
Seeing pairs of hooded robins together is pretty unusual. Every time I'd seen hooded robins before, I'd only ever seen sort of one at a time in quite sparse habitats. But seeing them doing courtship things is pretty fun.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, I like them. If I want to see a hooded robin, I've really got to go up the Capertee Valley, so right up, into almost the other side of the mountains to start getting a hooded robin. More people who are more local to the mountains might see them more, I don't know. But yeah, in Hawkesbury, pretty rare. Skyville National Park, great place to go birding. We had a grey shrike thrush build a nest high up on a... Ooh.
Now, of course, we should mention, Ricki, that if people want to get more of Ricki's sort of tips and favourite spots, we did do a number of bird watching deep dives in the past, which you'll find on the Bird Emergency YouTube channel, and we did talk about caper tea. We did an
Oh,
episode
yeah.
on caper tea, so do go back now. Ricki, Vicky's just said she photographed it in January, so
January.
that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
And
cool.
let's
Very cool in
uh,
Skyville.
and let
Yeah.
and let's go
Yeah.
back
I kind of
to
work a little bit
your
out that
bedding.
way. So, yeah. Actually, I work in Sydney Zoo, which is perhaps not far from where you are, Vicky. Um, and yeah, we had a restless flycatcher in the zoo apparently last week, which is pretty rare for the area. But these things will be moving through now because the migration back north is on. What's Betty got? She's got a grey shrike thrush high up on the patio. She would call, he would come in.
So she had
Both sat in the eggs, yes, they're both
so
incubating. Lovely, yeah. They all left the other
and
day.
now. So
Ah,
are they likely to come back for a second clutch? Do you think, Ricki, or is one enough? Do they get? I mean,
I'm not sure. Generally,
I
what happens?
really
The
don't know.
pattern is if you go to Europe, you'll see songbirds and they lay like a dozen eggs or in their nest. Australian
Yeah.
birds tend to do a like 3, sometimes 4 eggs to a clutch, but they will build a nest and they will do several clutches in a season. So yeah, we are getting pretty close to the end of the season. Grey shrike thrushes started very early, so we are starting to get like now into the end of breeding season for many birds. For some, they're just starting. Superb lyrebirds getting ready to start. And if you're a log runner, well, you're going to go pretty much year round. But yeah, I'm not sure if they use the same nest again. No, that's a bit of a thing, and it could be one that could be an invitation for parasites, or it could be an invitation for predators. Getting you become the longer you're going to the same place all the time, the more likely you are to let a predator know that you're around and got some easy pickings. So they might not. But I do love a grey shrike thrush when they come and I was alluding before to that I was once the warden at Broome Bird Observatory, and one used to land in a little bush right outside my front door and sing for me every morning, and it was a pure delight. Especially grey shrike thrush in northwest Australia. Such a beautiful song. Really, really something amazing.
I wouldn't be surprised if they come back and avail themselves of the use of your patio because they've found it to be a uh, suitable location.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing in terms of birds using nests, because that brings me back to yellow-throated scrub wrens, where often their cousin, the large-billed scrub wren, will visit their nest and renovate it and raise a clutch in their nest. So they've got that little commensalism going on. But yeah,
oh,
always lovely to have them.
Naomi,
Hi back
Naomi, I
there,
didn't
Ivy.
realise you've been unwell. Hope you get well soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, uh, so the but that means if you're not out doing sort of gardeny stuff, that means it's probably getting a bit wild, and of course the birds like that. But on the other hand, when you're not well and you're sort of tethered to home, you do spend a lot more time in your own garden, or perhaps looking at your own garden uh, from your favourite chair on the patio, and then you can become far more familiar with with the birds that are visiting you, and learn about what they are doing and how they're doing it.
Yeah. I think if you find yourself housebound, the first thing everyone should do is have a bird bath, let's face it. But yeah, put a few bird baths around.
Yep, and put one where in a spot that is logical and safe for the birds from any spot where you spend a lot of time. So anywhere that you get a sight line to a place that the birds like, put some water there, and they'll
you could
certainly
do a
appreciate
whole
it. And
you could do a whole live stream on bird baths and where to put them and how to do them and where and when and what works and doesn't. And I find like a couple is
exactly
good. Have a deeper one for ravens and a shallower one for little jobs, and And we even enjoy when the common myna, the Indian miners, come in and have a bath, and because they're great bathers, great lovers of a bath, the common myna, and we love them. And they're kind of they're a car park bird, but they're pretty.
But they're extremely interesting if you get to watch the same group all the time, because they've got pretty interesting group dynamics.
The noisy miners are really interesting. Yeah, noisy miners. We're noticing that noisy miners tend to. You'll get one come in for a bath, and it will call a friend, and the friend will sit on one side of the bath while it bathes, and when it's happy, they'll both fly off. So it's just kept someone to keep a lookout for them while they've got their head underwater.
That's right. The wattlebirds do that here for mine. I've got red wattlebirds only just starting using the bath, but one will come in. But there's one sitting on the power line watching. The crested pigeons do it too. There'll be a couple keeping watch.
Crested pigeons
come in and bathe.
See, another thing you can do if you are getting crested pigeons and noisy miners, and I've seen magpies do this too, is if you can find a little dusty corner, make a little dusty corner somewhere, they'll come in for a dust bath too.
Yeah, dust bath.
Just nothing like watching a bird enjoy a dust bath or a bird, but I love it.
We've got a patch of clayey dirt in the backyard. The dog likes it, but yeah, none of the bigger birds come in and use it, but both the house sparrows and the tree sparrows use. They dust bath very, very often.
Yeah, they're big dust bathers, aren't they? The sparrows. Yeah, I love them. I find them as exuberant. Whitbirds, I would imagine they could be. Yeah, I could imagine that whitbirds are very exuberant bathers. Yeah. Yeah. You know what also is a very exuberant bather? Superb lyrebirds.
Loz the lorikeet. Loz is a very exuberant bather. I only really found that out as I gave him a deeper bath one day, a deeper pot saucer, because I was using the other one for something else, and he was extremely happy to have something deeper, and he spends about half an hour diving in, bathing, and then going to the top of the cage, getting himself a bit organised, and then coming down for some more. He's having fun.
Yes, because this is your home lorikeet. Yeah. I'm actually thinking very seriously of getting a couple of budgies. So plans are kind of underfoot.
I'm really wrestling. I'm really wrestling with this because I think I have to get Loz a friend. I mean, because lorikeets are extremely social.
Yeah.
And so I think I have to get Loz a friend, but I feel so guilty because I never wanted to have any birds in a cage.
Well, the idea of birds in a cage is
that Loz turned up.
Yeah. Well, if you have a situation where the bird can come out and fly, every day it can come out and get some flight. they're quite happy to, sit around and, be in a cage for a bit like that. And this is the life these little dinosaurs know, and they're quite happy with it as long as they get their basic needs met of food and safety and shelter and companionship and the opportunity to fly and express themselves in the way that all the flighted birds do. I think it's good, and I'm on some because I've got a whole thing going on where I'm going to want some little bird ambassadors, and so
very
these are
cool.
going to be education birds. So
well, consider the cockatiel. They're ideal for that kind of thing.
well, they
the
are. I've just got to watch
gentlemen.
bird noise where I live, because we can't have something that's going to make a lot of
okay.
noise. And a cockatiel can cut loose pretty loud sometimes. I've had cockatiels, and they are a true delight of a bird. And they, in fact, I would put them up there alongside, well, perhaps even better than eclectus parrots, because they're got a bit more personality. Not that eclectus can't show it, but they're not far off the good old owl. And the best ambassador bird is an owl, but you can't get try getting a permit to have an owl, and who wants,
No,
unless it's a rescue owl that, I know people that do have owls. We have a group up here in Sydney called Feathered Friends, and that one of those guys is a bit of a falconer in training and has a lot of free flighted birds that you can go along and do your thing. But for me, some little budgies that I can use as sort of co-educators and ambassadors will work very well for me, and they'll be extremely well trained. And I'm pretty well hooked up with people who do free flight bird shows and things like that, and working at a zoo with a lot of animal behaviouralists and things like that, and people abroad as well. So there's some fantastic places out there if you want to, and you can drop me a line on socials or email me through my website if you want details about people who run amazing bird courses. And these people are folk who train people who run bird shows in zoos all over America and elsewhere in the world. And a well-trained,
I never
like
see
a dog.
lorikeets in any of those bird shows.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Yeah, I don't know why that is, because as far as I'm aware, that
because they're aggressive when they're annoyed, and they
do have a bite.
so active that and they are so active that it's very, very difficult to keep them
they're a high-speed flyer.
Amused,
they're a really high-speed flyer.
But you've just got to keep their brain active. They're not like, you'll see cockatoos, galahs, budgies, canaries.
Canaries are a Pomeranian, and a lorikeet's a cattle dog, a border collie. One's a lot more work.
A lorikeet's like a whippet crossed with a American pit bull crossed with a cattle dog, I reckon. I mean,
the thing is too, the issue with lorikeets is they're nectarovores, and that means their poop is just like, man, hard to manage.
Well, the wall behind Loz's cage is now adorned with a shower curtain because I mean, it's just projectile, and we've got to mop the floor twice a day, and but because it's pretty easy to manage, because it's it's just poop that it's easy to mop up. But the thing with the lorikeet is because they're so hyper after they feed that you've got to keep them active and interested, or else they do become aggressive and very bitey, or they become bored and then they're very loud. But the other thing, which I guess most people, if they've got lorikeets around, certainly around the world, don't have to worry about whenever the lorikeets, the wild lorikeets, are flying around and doing their contact calls. Loz is talking to them, and
Yeah, very
there's
loudly.
no way you can't count it, and you can't counter that behaviour. It just you just have to
And
go,
no, you
oh
wouldn't
well,
want to either.
that's all
But
right.
yeah, she's
Well,
saying, yeah, she
I
does
don't
want a
mind it,
friend.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I don't mind it. But one of my neighbours, it gets grumpy with it, and but they're the same one with the cat. So
Oh,
I just
yeah.
go, well, get
Well,
stuffed. Get stuffed.
here the walls are like paper. So where I live in my little townhouse here in Sydney, and out of respect for the neighbours, I would not get a noisy bird. Budgies just have a little chatter and occasionally an exuberant trill, but that's about it. Otherwise, I'll just chatter away. And yes, a couple little budgies would be a delight. And otherwise, I would be looking at, yes, as you say, cockatiels, or even peach face, or um,
Oh yeah.
you
Well,
know,
I was going to
mas-
mention lovebirds.
lovebirds, or
They're a
fishes
beauty.
lovebirds. Fishes lovebirds, a beautiful little bird. They're a small lovebird, and they're very friendly and very trainable, really trainable. But I imagine also I haven't kept just the standard lovebird, the African lovebird, but I imagine they'd be very trainable as well, and they're a beaut bird, and
Yeah,
very sort
peach
of
face
robust.
and
Yeah,
mast and nyassas. They're all
yeah.
pretty good to.
Yeah, I've kept mast
Yeah.
and fishes out of that group, and
Oh,
good. You know, the person to
fishes are
speak to about keeping
great.
birds, of course, is our friend Nick Bishop.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
he's a great keeper of birds and trainer of bird trainers. He's a trainer of the trainers, and he's good. Another is, now she doesn't do it so much anymore. Do you know Peter Clark? So
I
Peter
don't
Clark
know
he
Peter
trains
Clark,
animals for
but I do know
movies
who
these
Peter
days, I
Clark is.
think. But she had
Yeah.
a Corella called Gilmore, and Gilmore was a wild Corella that turned up at her place, and she just started feeding it, and he moved in, and they became the best of buddies. And she had that bird trained up so well. He would collect coloured pegs of, name the colour, and he will get the pegs to help with the washing.
Yeah.
He will help do the dishes. He would collect the mail. And she would have a little game when she wanted to inspect his claws. She would say, "I've got a gun, Gilmore, I've got a gun." And he would run round and round in circles screaming, "Oh no."
Hands up.
And then she would go pew, 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 and he would roll on his back and stick his claws up, and she could examine them to see if she needed to give them a little trim. And then he'd be lying there opening one eye now and again to see if it was time to get up. And then she'd go, "Oh, good," and he'd hop up and off he'd go. So she was doing the kind of training that you would do in a zoo. Like, for instance, at Sydney Zoo with the elephants, they train the elephants to put their feet up so they can give them their little, weekly or fortnightly manicure.
Yeah.
Yes, elephants are terribly spoilt in zoos. But yeah, all of these things
Yeah.
not only serve to help manage and check on the health of the animal, but also give them that enrichment. So training, if you've got birds, and I think especially parrots, I think it's really important to train them because these are smart birds. Same as if you have a raven, you've got to give them problems, and you've got to give them, things, engagement that not only engages their mind but also helps connect them with you and creates a relationship. So yeah, but hey,
Yeah.
I'm getting very
Loz is
close.
just getting into playing.
I'm kind of getting close
Oh,
to
what's
departure
happened?
time here.
Yeah. That's cool. We're just chinwagging now. So, all right,
Yeah.
folks, let's do the business. Aussiewild.com.au, where you can get hold of a book from Ricki. Ricki, do you? I'd, I'd I'd like to give away a book to a member, but I'd like to do that on a members only show. So if you're
I,
happy with
I
that,
I will donate you a book to give to a member.
fan.
And you can see in
Thank
the
you.
background here, see
Thank
this
you.
big poster on the wall, this big sticky poster on my wall in the background there? Will give you a hint to the cover of my next book.
Is that I can see in the background? I can see a red-backed fairy
A giant red-backed fairy wren sitting on a barbed wire fence. Yes.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, so there we go. So it's going to be
The book will be called The Fairy
Fences
Wren.
of Rural Australia, and
yeah. Well, it's meant
Fences
to
of
be the
Rural
fairy
Australia
wren,
featuring fairy wrens. Yeah,
but
very cool.
there's
Good.
been a lot of calls for, and I'm not averse to the idea of little brown birds. I've got to come up with a different title of Australia or the like.
Borbs, little brown borbs.
Little brown bulbs, maybe. And
Yep.
because I am a little in the
that-
process of upgrading illustrations that I have, and I'm thinking like maybe I should just upgrade all these illustrations and produce the new one, because it's not that much of a leap. It's a fair bit of a leap. A fair bit of the information's the same, but then there's whole other bits of sections, so it can be like the whole revised, extra big, but it will become a thicker thing, and it might be that I might have to collaborate to produce a book.
Well, folks, the last thing I want to ask you is just say a yes or a no if you think I should be getting Ricki back on the show more regularly to delve into the intricacies of various bird groups, particularly evolutionary aspects and stuff. So if you think Ricki should be on more often, just pop in the comments, yes or no. It's a binary choice. So even someone with the intellect of Donald Trump should be able to manage answering that question. Ricki, when you mentioned Arnold Palmer earlier on,
oh yeah,
all I could think of was Donald Trump. So it's a terrible thing, isn't it?
well, what's going on in America is terrible, both for the American people and the people of the world and the living world, because his attitude towards climate change, I mean, there is no greater ignoramus to ever have ascended the presidency, that's for certain. And thank you, Naomi. And the threats to the environment, both in America and globally, is just terrifying that this man is producing this totally uneducated idiot.
I've got to say, one thing that has really infuriated me with the coverage, and I've been watching a lot of it, looking for rays of hope.
Yeah, we're all doom
scrolling. Where it
scrolling.
comes from, but the coverage from all around the world, I'm seeing very little people talk about. Some are mentioning climate change, but I'm not hearing anyone mention the biodiversity risks just from the increase in development. So again, it's that case where we haven't won the argument, I think, about decoupling the conversations about biodiversity and climate change, because people are always talking. There's always this group of people saying, "Oh, we'll come up with a technical solution. Mankind will develop a solution to global warming." Well, that might be true, but
what about deforestation and
planet.
and destruction of our oceans? And then you'll get me raising up my vegan flag and doing all that talk about the effect of the way we procure food in this world, and that it's the most destructive thing in the world. Leaves climate change in the shade. But climate change is the kind of like when we talk about the environment and issues, climate change is like the issue du jour. and has been going that way for a long time now. It was deforestation. We should be looking at what we're doing to the oceans with a much, much closer eye, looking at it very, very attentively to what's happening in our oceans too. But
don't
it
even
is.
start me with the ridiculous statement about sharks and plastic straws.
Oh my God!
It's
Yeah,
bordering
yeah. Which is
bananas.
yeah. Here's a see. This is all part of the danger aspect of having someone who is a malignant narcissist, running a nation like America, and um, his own estimation of himself is externally quite incredible. Meanwhile, he hates himself. This is the malignant
And
narcissist, and
and
it's
the amazing thing is people are still trying to separate Donald Trump from Republicans, and and I'm always trying to remind people, hey, it's not just Republicans; it's conservatives. Have a look around the world
yeah,
at the people who are waving the flag for the destruction of the
yeah,
planet,
yeah,
and it's always conservatives, no
yeah,
matter
yeah.
what badge they're wearing, and so.
Well,
Uh,
it's always the
I
ones
know
that
we
call
weren't going to
most
be doing
loudly for
political.
war and everything, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the thing is,
but
it's
it's pretty simple. If you call yourself an environmentalist and a conservationist, you should have it deeply ingrained that every conservative is your enemy. And
this is the enemy of the cause, at least. And it's you have, for instance,
yeah,
but
well
they feed off each
well
other.
that's right.
Peter Dutton has caused. There was two, and I actually posted something on Facebook about this because I thought it was terrible that there were two nurses and they didn't state where they were from, but it's pretty sure they were of Palestinian stock, who said they would not care for an Israeli person if they came to the hospital. Now, I thought that was wrong, but
Well,
you
it
have,
certainly was
because
stupid,
we
and
need to understand nuance. We need to be more reflective before we start deciding who is who just based on, with these broad brush
but
strokes. And
but
but
you
Peter
also
Dutton just said,
don't have that right. If
no,
you
no,
work in public health in Australia, you don't have that right. You don't have the
you
right
care
to
you
not
care for the
treat
person
someone.
in front of you. There is none. There's no.
Yeah,
This is the Hippocratic oath that nobody.
that's right.
That it is you.
You have the
You
right
you heal the
to
person in
resign
front
and
of.
piss off home. Yeah,
Well, I mean, if
you've got
if
the
you
right to
can't,
resign and piss off home, but you don't have the right to be sitting there in the emergency room and going, "Oh no, I don't treat Italians,"
Well,
or
there's lots of people who say
you
they
just
who
don't.
give all kinds of horrible advice to transgender people because they don't like them too, and we could go down that whole burrow, but let's not. But the thing is that Peter Dutton piped up and said we should strip them of their of their status, whether they were, and that we should do this for everyone whose views don't align with mainstream Australia, should have their nationality
Well, if
stripped
they're the
and then
ones I'm
deport
thinking of,
them.
they got sacked.
They were sacked, were they?
They got sacked.
I
So
thought they walked it
yeah,
back, but they weren't sacked. It probably is a
no,
sackable
I'm
offence.
I'm pretty sure. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure they got sacked, and I
yeah.
think
Can't
that
have
was
that
fair enough.
attitude. You can't have
But
that
then
attitude. Yeah.
to extend it to other sort of punishments, well, then you really open the can of worms
Well, this is Dutton
about
jumping on
what.
the Trump train, isn't it? This is Peter
Oh,
Dutton
but even
getting that. Oh, let's strip them of their nationality, which is what Trump proposes to
but,
do and is doing over in America. And he's just trying to. That is just a dog whistle to people who think that it would be great to have someone like Trump running the show here. And so a
but
nasty bit of
remember
ugly constituency building.
but remember this stuff happens in Australia. Like we've just had passed in the Parliament some special anti-hate laws, which are an
Yeah,
extension of what we already had,
yeah,
based on an incident which was just kids doing egging. They weren't making political statements of any sort. it was exactly the kind of thing. I don't know about you, Ricki, but me and my friends, when we were riding around on our dragsters and our family stars, um, uh, we did things like egging, and it
But
was very bad.
did they egg a bunch of gay people by any chance?
No, no, no. Of course not. They egged some people who were Jewish, but they didn't know. The kids didn't know that they were Jewish, and
Uh-huh.
they
Yeah.
were doing egging. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, Naomi has said here that those nurses, yeah, the I certainly saw that they said they would kill them and all that kind of stuff. So
Oh, yeah. See, that's
um,
really this is really not. Yeah, no, no. It is like I'm someone who strongly disagrees with what's going on over in that part of the world at the moment. But we always have to separate the actions of any one group from any one person for a start. You can't say, all Jewish people deserve it. I mean, it's just terrible, that anti-Semitism. I'm not there for that, but I'm not a supporter of the Zionist movement either. So yeah, and it makes it very hard amongst. I've got friends who are Jewish and some support, the eradication, I guess, of Palestinian people, and
yeah,
some who are appalled. And yeah, you have to just
yeah, it
remember a
it's
little nuance and apply reason and good judgment before you start saying things in this space.
yeah, uh, I think the rhetoric becomes crazy, and uh, the thing I'm disappointed with is that there doesn't seem to be any consistency um, in the arguments to defend certain positions that are trotted out now, and
Yeah.
that makes moving forward very very difficult. But anyway, I didn't want to get political in the bird podcast. So that's a good one for
Yes,
Grant's
yes, we got to
rants.
stay away. Yeah, we got to
Yeah,
stay. Well, I mean, no, the thing is that I think that, yeah, it's that there's people who are just out and right Nazis and anti-Semites who are riding on the train of trying to say that, oh no, they're against what Israel's doing in Gaza, when that's not what it is. It's not what it is. It's they're racists
no,
and haters and Nazis. And yeah, you've one's ears must be very alert to that stuff. But you can criticize one thing. Two things can be different things can be true at the same time. And it's
that's
it's
right.
it's not
That's
all
right.
Jewish. It's got nothing to do with Judaism, really. Um, and we know, of course, that there's been some pretty horrible things said on and as we've seen here about the Palestinian side of things. And I can understand that people's temperatures are running pretty high on this, and it's an area probably.
Yeah, and
If you haven't got,
and
I haven't got any. Yeah, I can't think of what the saying is, but I don't have any thing in that area, so I tend to stay away from it. I've called out what I see as wrong, but it's not. I haven't got skin in this game, and I think it's best to leave it to people
no,
who do
same
to
here.
have the conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't particularly
I,
like,
I
for those who don't know, I happen to be transgender, and I don't particularly like hearing conversations about people who aren't trans talking, dissecting the lives of transgender people and talking about what rights and wrongs exist around them and what rights they're entitled to and that kind of thing. And so I'm not that keen to talk about that area, just off the
well,
cuff.
there's something which was brought into law in Australia, and it's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Yes.
It's a United Nations document, but it has been codified into statute in Australia, and that everyone has basic human rights. And if you don't believe that, if you don't believe that, well, then you're not you, you, you- you're not on my side of the fence, and that's as
Yeah.
simple
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
as that.
Well, that's the thing.
And
There you go.
I can look
Yeah.
back at I can look
Naomi
back
and I are
at
on the
my
same page with
childhood.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, I can look back at my childhood and the way that I was indoctrinated as a kid, and some of the absolutely lunatic things that I said as a younger person, as a teenager, and maybe even in my 20s, hanging around with blokes who were similarly indoctrinated. And I look back now and think that is so dumb. But kids now do not receive the same kind of. I mean, uh, I've said this before. I can still recite the stupid oath that we used to have to recite on a Monday morning. I love God and my country. I will honour the flag. I will cheerfully obey my parents, my teachers, and the law. That's what we started the week off,
It's pretty
and
weird.
that was in the 60s and 70s in rural
Yeah.
Victoria.
Oh.
It's not that long ago, but we can't imagine that we would be telling people now to cheerfully obey my parents, teachers, and the law.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
I I love God and my country. I will serve the Queen. I will honour the flag. I will
So
cheerfully obey my parents, teachers, and the law. Now, I put that out once before and asked if anyone else had to do that. I think it was just the what the headmaster at my school
just cooked it
thought we
up.
should
Yeah.
do, because I don't know anyone else who used to
No,
have
we
to
never
do
had
that. But we
that
had to
in those
go out,
days.
line up, salute the flag, um,
Mm.
and so people
But look, it's
people
just
get
very.
bloody indoctrinated with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, well, look, it is look. It's a fact that the signals that you receive, which can be very clear, if you're growing up a little transgender kid, you receive all the signals you need, and you hear all the language you need, and you hear the hate and the derision and the mocking and all of this kind of thing that you need to also teach you to hate transgender people, and it's called internalized transphobia.
Yeah,
And it's not what people say; it's what they make you believe about yourself, and that is the harm. And this is
yeah,
I know so many gay men who are just so broken by this kind of thing, and of a particular generation especially, um, and it's just a horror. It's so wrong, and plenty of transgender people suffer and struggle as well, and probably lesbian women and everyone who's doesn't you know didn't come out of the same cookie cutter. Um, yeah, will feel a degree of the heat in this sort of situation, and yeah, it makes it just that little bit harder to enjoy your life, I think. And yeah, it's a bit. Fortunately,
we
I've had a good
we
trot,
can
and yeah, and
we
have
can
a
all be a bit nicer. That's
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
that's what I reckon.
yeah. I have a really happy,
So um,
productive
so
life of doing what I do and doing work that I love, and working in a zoo and having a bird watching business, and and writing books about birds. And did I mention I write a book? And yeah, and like that. So it's
now
yeah,
Now, Ricki and I have had many conversations along this line
yeah,
before, where we've strayed into this kind of territory while talking about birds and conservation. So do go back and have a look at the bird watching deep dive playlist at the Bird Emergency YouTube page, and you can catch all of those. You can catch up with all of those conversations. I can tell you we've had some very useful conversations.
mm,
Um, and I need to tell you that you can buy Ricki's book direct from Ricki at aussiewild.com.au, which is scrolling around the bottom. But if you would like to give yourself a chance to win a copy of Little Brown Birds, go and get yourself a membership to the Bird Emergency at, and we do that at Buy Me a Coffee. So that's thebirdemergency.com/coffee. And go and do that. And I've also got a giveaway. There's 4 or 5 more books that I'm going to give away to do this, but I'm not sure if we'll do that on Monday or if we'll do that a bit later. But go and get yourself, become a member, and then you'll get the email about where, when to watch, or I'll work it out, because maybe people, if you're a member and you can't watch, I'm still going to give you a chance to win. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah. So tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Habitat Gardening. Naomi's got another comment here. We're getting into we're going back into politics, I think, here. It's tragic.
Well,
There
it's
is
life.
internalized
This is
homophobia.
Well, this shouldn't be politics. This should be this should be civics. It should be like, how we can teach our children, construct our society, and understand the person standing next to us, and all of that stuff. But so look, I'm going to wave. Oh, well, thank you, Naomi. Yes, I if anything, I've had a pretty amazing life, and I do a fair bit of work behind the scenes in the LGBTIQ place, but these days it is a lot more birds. And in fact, I'm at a conference on Monday, believe it or not, about diversity, equity, and inclusion, put together by my fabulous colleagues at Guiding Sport Australia. So
you're obviously not flying to America for that, because it's illegal in America.
Yeah. It's it's what can I say? But this conference is very timely, and it's put together by a wonderful person called Bo Newell, and who I think is just fabulous. It is to make sure that we codify and understand and have a conference about this, and that people get in their minds what is the value of, what are all the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and understanding them not just in the context of hiring people to work jobs, but in the context of sharing a train with diversity, with people of diverse nationalities, and going to play and like this. And working at Sydney Zoo, it is an amazing melting pot of ethnicities that come to that zoo, and an opportunity to learn and meet and learn about people. And my favourite thing to do when I go to Melbourne is to get on a train at around about 9:30 in the morning and travel a few stops and just see the wonderful fruit salad of humanity that makes up Melbourne. And you see it all on a train, all the races from all over. It is a wonderful thing to experience who and what we are through that lens.
Yeah, you're welcome out in St Albans anytime. It's we've certainly got a fruit salad over here.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. I will eventually make my way down to Melbourne, and we will go birding as well as enjoy fruit salad of humans. All right.
Well, I can be your passenger princess. I hear that's the thing that's something that people say now. Passenger princess. So
not sure what that might mean, but anyway, you can be that. My glasses are broken anyway. I've just noticed that they're starting to go. There's something wrong with it.
Mine too. Can't I don't know. People probably can't see. It looks like I'm frozen on this. On this.
Yeah, it does. It just looks like you've put a graphic there.
I've got the gaffer tape holding my glasses together. So.
Oh, really? Yeah. So, well, look, thank you so much for having me. And I hope that the listeners enjoyed a few insights into the book, and will grab themselves a copy. It's always lovely to talk about them and to be back on the show again. So
it's been a long time coming. Thanks, Naomi. Thanks, Vicky. Thanks, Betty. Did I leave anyone else out? I can't
I'm
remember
not sure it was a
everyone
past
for.
the thousands, but
It was good. It was good. Well, we always get the lurkers who don't jump in. That's fair enough.
yep.
So yeah, catch me tomorrow morning 9:30 for Habitat Gardening. Catch Ricki. Go and check out AussieWild.com, even if you're not buying the book, because there's stuff there that you might enjoy as well. And if you're in Sydney, consider booking a tour with Ricki and learning about scrub wrens and thornbills and pilot birds in person.
Or even
That could
maybe
be good.
just reaching out and saying, Ricki, are you going birding this weekend, or are you going birding on Wednesday? And I might just say, yes, where do we meet? So, yeah, or we're meeting here,
Yes,
or whatever. I'm
I need to
not
get a
someone who
pass.
always says, this is a tour you must pay kind of person. I just like to sometimes go birding with someone. And yeah, it's
birding.
good to do.
Actually, look, we've talked about this many times before. What we should do is do like we have talked about. We should formalise this. We should do our like a bird emergency bird watching day up there, and with you, and
Oh,
drag a few other
yeah.
people in and pick a location or two, and do like a 4-wheel drive convoy around a couple of locations. Even if you're driving a Honda Civic, you jump in and anyway, we should formalise that. We should pick a date and make it happen, and
Do a thing.
and
Yeah, go birding in
go
some
and
really cool place. Maybe not even exactly
yeah,
in Sydney. Maybe say, let's go to Round Hill or somewhere out in the outback and get
yeah,
some extraordinary birds. Gilbert's Whistler or Red Lord Whistler or something. Yeah, like that.
yeah,
Go
or
on a
down
trip.
go down to the little desert before it's all gone.
It's on fire again, isn't it?
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it still is. Yeah, there are parts of it still on fire. I should say I've made contact with Simon Vernon too to talk about the Mallee emu wren population down there, but we haven't organised anything. We've just managed to say hey, because he's not only at La Trobe some of the year now, he's also in Germany some of the year. So that's what happens when you're academic, doesn't it, Ricki? You move around.
Move around. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be very happy to be moved anywhere where there aren't
Okay.
yellow-throated scrub wrens. So I'm glad I'm not an academic.
No,
But
I know you'd be very grumpy.
yeah, no
You'd be
lyrebirds. I
like that.
know.
You'd be like that lyrebird that sounds like a screaming child.
Yeah. No, I didn't
I'm
mind
sure
it
we've
being
all
in
seen
Broome for a
on
while. That was very
YouTube
good.
and TikTok.
Yeah. Oh, wherever you go, you find birds and you love what you see, and birds are. This is it with birds. Yeah, we've all got our favourite birds we always want to see, but there's plenty of others to bring delight at any one time. So yeah, well, thanks again, Grant.
Yeah.
And I'll look forward to joining you again
Pleasure,
on
Ricki.
another bird emergency. And let's get in touch about getting a book down to you so you can give one away.
And in the meantime, if you can't wait, get onto Ricki's site, aussiewild.com.au, and buy yourself a book. Do you think it'll pop up in any bookshops anywhere, Ricki?
It could do. I'm going to talk to some bookshops around the place, but probably I'm going to start by talking to ones like bookshops in places like our national parks and zoos and things like that, where there's a little bit of an audience for this kind of thing. Yeah, we'll see. We'll take it from there. There is one or two people I know who work in bookshops who are saying I must come round and talk to them and pop some in on consignment, and I may do that. We'll see how things pan out.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Great.
Well, thanks, folks, for joining me again. It's great we got Ricki back on the show. We had a good reason to do it. Again, 9:30 a.m. tomorrow morning, Australian Eastern Daylight Time for Habitat Gardening. And, otherwise, get into the back catalogue of the Bird Emergency on the YouTube page, thebirdemergency.com/YouTube. Thanks, Ricki.
Thank you. See you later. I don't know how to go, but I'm gone.
It's all right. We've